Perspectives, Finding Common Ground, a podcast series that brings together a panel of thought leader perspectives as a forum to socialize and problem solve education technology issues with the goal to ultimately find common ground.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Perspectives, Finding Common Ground. I'm Patrick Devaney, and we are celebrating Cybersecurity Month this month with this episode talking about cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities in education. And a very distinguished cast with me here today, panel for this discussion. And I think we'll start by going around the horn and letting everybody introduce themselves and hear a little bit about their perspective on this topic. Why don't we start with you, Stacy, if it's okay?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Hi, I'm Stacy Hawthorne. I am the Executive Director of the EdTech Leaders Alliance. We are a nonprofit based out of Ohio, and we serve as the Ohio home for COSIN, HISTE, CEDA, and the Student Data Privacy Consortium. And I also sit as the board chair for the COSIN.
Great. Welcome. So glad to have you with us here today. Eva, I think we'll go to you next, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eva Rodriguez, and I serve as the Chief Information Technology Officer for San Antonio ISD. I've been here 13 years, and we've done a lot of great work. I'm super excited about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We do a lot of fun things here at SAISD with our students, some that have now become tradition and our students look forward to. So just excited to be here in this month and to share some of those things that we're doing with the community.
Fantastic. Looking forward to hearing more about that as we go forward here today. And last but certainly not least, Berj, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Berj Akian. I'm the CEO and founder here at ClassLink. I guess the cybersecurity stuff is real. It's not going away, it seems. So we should definitely talk a lot about it, and excited to share some of the things that we're working on here at ClassLink related to it and what I see happening with the school systems and sometimes state leadership that I get to work with on this topic. So excited to be here with all of you. Thanks.
Fantastic. So welcome to all of you. Let's dive right in. And I guess, Berj, let's go back to you to start this, if we could. And let's talk a little bit about what's the most critical cybersecurity threat you see right now in K-12? How has that kind of changed over the last year or year and a half?
Sure. I guess I would frame it as, I think we're starting to see a bifurcation, a separation of how cyber events are occurring. From the school system side, it seems like the cyber threats that they face are ones that have the effect of potentially shutting them down for business. And that is to say, it is the kind of attacks that cause schools to disrupt their regular classroom schedule. So that's, I think, what we're starting to see from schools. And then what we're starting to see from the edtech vendors are attacks that are designed to steal data. And so that bifurcation is interesting because you don't necessarily see attacks on vendors to shut them down. You see attacks to take the data. And when they're attacking schools, it doesn't seem so much that they're there to try to take the data. It does happen, but they seem to be there to try to shut them down. And the ransom reflects that. The money from the vendors about the data and money that they're attempting to take from school systems to get them back online.
Great point. Eva, are you seeing it in that way in your school system today?
Yeah, definitely. Ransomware attacks are still top of mind for many CTOs, and we still see it happening to some of our neighbors. Unfortunately, here close by, we had a school district that was closed last week for 3 days due to a ransomware attack. And, those are maybe short-term, things that we deal with, but then there's the long term of also the data loss, right? And really recovering all those systems. The phishing attacks that we get, I don't know if that's just our sector, but, we see it here, the millions and millions of emails that get caught in our filters, and then the few that make it through, that are really just trying to steal credentials. That does not seem to go away. It just seems to, those phishing emails seem to just be getting better and better. So, some of the same things that we've seen for a while, but just with different twists and just getting, sometimes harder to detect from individuals.
Berj, could I get you to dive in a little deeper in terms of identity access and or identity management? How do you see that playing into some of these threats? The ability to respond or protect against these threats?
I guess I would say that the space of identity management is certainly close to this because the way the attacks are working, and this may be to Eva's point, the way the attacks are coming in these days is that bad actors are pretending to be real people. So way back, you would think of an attack as someone just trying to do something to penetrate your firewall and try to deposit a virus or something like that. The attacks that are happening today are using valid credentials. And so they're mimicking actual folks that are part of the school community or part of the vendor community. And when that happens, they're impersonating them and having access to all the resources that account is allowed to access. So now we're talking about what is it that identity management can do to put in place protective measures so that the real accounts for real people are only used by the intended parties. So that's why I think identity and access management getting brought in more robust ways into cybersecurity because of that. And long ago, attackers were just trying to get into the network, didn't really care about impersonation. Today, a lot of it is impersonation.
They really are wolves in sheep's clothing, so to speak, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to get in any way they can. Well, okay, so with that as a little bit of a backdrop, let's talk about some differences. We talked about the differences, or Bears mentioned the differences between concerns for vendors or concerns for schools specifically. But there's also this layer of states and potential challenges in states. So, Stacey, you're involved with CETA and COSIN. And I guess I would ask, what differences do you see by the challenges that are facing state-level organizations versus individual district-level organizations? And how do they manifest themselves?
I love to answer that. Can I piggyback on something both Emma and Pat Birch said earlier before I get that? I wrote it down so I won't forget to come back to it. I loved what Birch said when he opened up and he talked about ransomware and schools being attacked. And the thing, and Eva kind of hinted at this too, the thing that makes it even harder on a K-12 system is we have a very well-defined calendar. So school starts at a certain time, semesters end at a certain time, grades go out, transcripts have to go to college. That's public information. And that makes us even more vulnerable because people time those attacks when they know where we need that data the most. And so you'll notice if you look at some of the reports from MSISAC and other organizations that attacks happen when schools are most vulnerable and we need that data more than we need it at other times. So it doesn't happen on a random Wednesday in October. It happens because transcripts are due to universities and you have to pay up. So there's some vulnerability that goes in for schools there. And then Eva talked a little bit about the phishing attacks, and what I'm seeing and hearing a lot about now is what's called social phishing. And so it's not just the random email that says, hey, click here and download this PDF. It's somebody, Eva runs an amazing school district and it is a very large school district. So a teacher in a classroom in Eva's school district doesn't know every single person by name that works in Eva's tech department, every single tech. And so a random tech calls up and starts saying, hey, I'm Charlie and I'm your tech. And they start to build a relationship with this teacher over time. And Charlie's not a real person. Charlie doesn't work for Eva. And eventually Charlie builds up enough trust with this teacher. And it's happened to major organizations, major companies, including Salesforce, have given out information over the phone because they built these relationships. So you're seeing that social phishing piece come up, which goes back to what Burge was saying again about layering on that identity management and doing it in a way. This is what I love about ClassLink is does it in a way that adds security to the system, but without overburdening the end user, because you see a lot of people that struggle with layers, multiple MFA and two-factor authentication trying to get into their account. So it's really important, like Burge was saying, that we add that security, but we don't burden folks. So now back to the state question. COSIN just releases.
No, you interrupted us to bring that up.
Thank you. Sorry. I didn't interrupt. I waited patiently, but wrote my notes down. We are seeing cuts at the federal level, and particularly some organizations that provided a lot of cybersecurity resources to schools and public entities at no charge. And so you're seeing a lot of states step up with resources and provide new laws. So COSIN just about a week and a half ago released their new State of Cybersecurity legislation report that highlights 5 states across the U.S., and very diverse states, Arkansas, Texas, Washington, and 2 others, because there were 5. And you're seeing in those 5 states, there were almost 61 pieces of new legislation related to cybersecurity. in K-12 education that were introduced and talked about. Not all of them made it through. So states are trying to step up and fill that gap, but you have such another reason that makes K-12 vulnerable is I was a former tech director. I got promoted to tech director because I was the first teacher in the state of Ohio to teach with a classroom set of iPod touches, not because I knew about cybersecurity or data privacy. And so you have really good people that care about education, that are passionate about education, that got in it to make a difference and to change lives, that didn't get in it to, worry about cybersecurity. They're now having to face those burdens and those hurdles. And so generally they're trusting people. And so states are having to step in and provide this training. In Ohio, every school district now has to have a cybersecurity plan. That was not something that had to happen before with the new law that we just had. And so those resources are starting to come out, and being involved in COSIN and CEDA are amazing ways to get to some of those resources and hear what people like Eva are doing in San Antonio.
Eva and Bears, any thoughts on how we can bridge the gap? Because there's a big difference between how big districts address these challenges or the resources they have versus small districts and the resources they have. And how do we bridge that gap so that there's an equity and protection for all the users that are there?
Yeah, in Texas, we have region centers, right? So we're divided into region centers, and they really bring us together to share information and lessons learned. We had another district up the road that was hit a couple of years ago, and just the sessions that they did around what they went through, what they did to protect themselves and to recover. So all that information sharing within, there's so many organizations. We have our Texas chapter of COSIN, TEDL. And then in San Antonio, we have our San Antonio tech directors, and we have our Region 20 center, right? So we have all these groups and organizations that all districts of all sizes can come together to share resources, informations, lessons learned. There's a lot too I see on both large and small districts is just really building people from within, right? Because staff resources is a challenge for districts in all sizes. But in the small districts, if it's the same person doing multiple things, the training and building from within is something that's important. I think also offering internships, like for us, has built a great pipeline, and it's taken years and it's not easy. Sometimes you think just building an internship program is bring the interns in. Like you have to decide exactly what you're going to give them access to, how and what you're going to be working on, and how you build up that program. So it's not just easy as bringing, let's bring in 15 interns, to do something, but really, giving the students a good chance to learn and see what working in cybersecurity actually looks like. Our internship program here at SDISD rotates the students, even if they're cybersecurity students. And sometimes they'll ask us at the beginning, like, why do I need to go sit with the networking team? And we tell them, you need to know what you're defending, right? You need to understand how the systems work so you know how you're going to defend. And then when we started doing that for the interns, some of our full-time staff members is like, hey, like, what about us? Like, I'm currently a field technician, but I would love to also learn about the other areas of technology. So that's helped now build up a pipeline of staff that we have, having them learn other areas, and then also students, having them ready for whenever opportunities do become available, they have the hands-on experience that is needed.
I'm a fanboy of a movement, I'll call it, that ClassLink is a part of. And ClassLink is part of a coalition called the Cybersecurity Rubric Coalition. And this organization got together and helped fund the creation of a cybersecurity rubric based on the NIST CSF, or cybersecurity framework availability. That is to say, the framework is available on the NIST website. We funded an initiative to take that framework and create a rubric designed for education. And what I'm excited, and why I'm excited about that, is that it is an industry accepted framework. It's rather complete in the scope in terms of matters related to governance, to planning, to execution, to evaluation. So it's a rather complete framework. And this rubric now exists. And what I'm excited about it is that I see, to your point or question, Patrick, that tool is being used by districts that are the tiny tinies and some of the biggest ones in the nation. And what's fantastic is that it scales across all of them. It's also, that program also has within it a designation that this coalition has created called the Cybersecurity Rubric Evaluator, so CCRE. And that is a special credential for which there's training, on-demand training available. And what folks can do is complete that training and they get their certification. There's an exam, they get their certification. Now what you have is a model where schools can perform self-evaluations on their cybersecurity readiness, and there is a marketplace of independent rubric evaluators who can review the work that was done through the self-evaluation. And so you have independence. Through this movement, we've created a platform on which schools can grow within, to Eva's point, grow their own teams with on-demand training, and have the power of independent evaluation. And we're starting to see some really fantastic things develop from there, not only in the capacity and confidence of folks within school systems, but also the camaraderie and helpfulness that you find when people want to help each other through the idea of being an independent evaluator for your peer district. And that, I think, is just a fantastic pathway to help folks with cybersecurity.
I do have my CCRE, and I wanted to jump in and say I concur with everything Bears just said. It is the Cybersecurity Coalition, and the rubric is a phenomenal tool. If I was still a tech director in a school district, I would have at least one person in every single one of my buildings go through that cybersecurity training course. As a educator, I'm the worst student because I'm going to critique course design and layout and everything. That cybersecurity rubric course is the only course I've ever been through that I didn't come up with a list of 50 things that was wrong with it. It is so well designed and so well done and uses good principles that Eva is an amazing person and would be somebody that I would go to if I had a cybersecurity question. But Eva can't be in every single one of her buildings in San Antonio. Eva can't solve every single cybersecurity problem that's going to come in San Antonio. Her frontline warriors are those people in the building, those teachers, those tech coaches, those technicians that she has out in the building. So if I'm still a tech director, I'm having at least one person and probably more go through that training, whether they take the test to be a certified cybersecurity rubric evaluator or not. That gives them the knowledge and the language and the things that are happening. So I may not expect that teacher to stop all cybersecurity attacks, but if they know enough that they can start having conversations at the lunch table with their colleagues, if they can have those conversations at staff meetings, you're going to get so much farther. And that rubric is so approachable. So I think it's more than just getting your CCRE and being able to be independent and help, but growing the understanding of what it's like to have to face these issues in a building is really important. And I think that rubric does a good job with that.
Thanks so much.
I think it's easy to understand too, because from what I know about the creation of the rubric is it took, maybe 5 or several different rubrics that were out there, right? And then some of the terms that are in there are easier for educators to understand, right? You have the ISO, you have NIST, you have all of these, right, that it's based on. And it took things from all of them to make it something that would just work perfectly for K-12 education.
So that's a great resource. I think one of the challenges with cybersecurity, if I could share a little bit of an opinion, is that it is also a major factor in it is the human factor. And it's only the security you put in place is only as strong as the humans that use it. And, awareness makes a big difference. And how do we effectively train everyone? Sounds like the cybersecurity rubric may be a tool for that. But I guess I would follow up with a more general question about how do we get staff up to date? How do we keep them informed? How do we keep them engaged? And I think, Eva, you're probably a good place to start here. How do you do it in your district? How do you keep them engaged and make sure that they're all aware?
Cybersecurity awareness and building a cyber aware culture is really like the foundation, right? It's one of the most important things that you can do in your cybersecurity strategy at your district or organization. And if you think about, the K-12 environment, we have this very wide audience, right? You have, 5-year-old students, you have teachers, you have people at all levels of technical skills, You have departments. So you have this very wide audience that you have to train and want to be aware. So what we tell our staff is you can have, all the security in the home, right? All the security in the home. But if you leave the front door open, right, somebody can just walk in. It doesn't matter how much tech you put into it. So some of the things that we do here at SAISD, we get our students involved during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Every year we have a poster contest, and the winning posters become the lock screens for their iPads and their Chromebooks. And actually within ClassLink, it becomes the background. So everybody in the district gets to see it. And that's one of the traditions we built. The kids look forward to that every single year. Like the first time we did it, we got a couple of entries, and now we get hundreds of entries because everybody wants to see their artwork in the front of that ClassLink screen when everybody's logging in, showcase there. So teachers and students get really excited about that. We actually have a mascot. His name is Simon the robot. So if you win the poster contest, we'll go out to your school, we give stickers, we make it a big deal. We get in front of parents and staff and give an award to the winning students. And so Simon, throughout the year, we say he's our head of security here at SAISD. We'll go out to different events, reminding students and staff, of the things they need, the basic things they need to do to be aware. So, celebrating Cybersecurity Month. One of the things that we don't do that I've talked to other CTOs across the country that's working well is having the training where it's just like little nuggets of training. Teachers today have so much required training. And one of them is the annual cybersecurity training, right? We all have the class, you log in, you have to take it. It serves its purpose, but that cannot be your strategy on how you're training people. We do focus trainings for HR and finance because they are heavily targeted because of the, types of information they have access to. We run phishing campaigns, and we don't always tell the principals why, but those with the highest failure rate, we go do a little presentation at their next faculty meeting, right, to help teachers understand. We also do tabletop exercises. We'll do them with our technical teams, and that we've been doing for years, right? They're real easy to find online, or if you have somebody come in and run a tabletop exercise with you. But it's probably been about 2 years now. My superintendent came back from a conference and he said, Eva, I went to a cybersecurity session and I hear about these schools closing down. I do not want to close down schools. He says, are we prepared? If this happens, are we prepared? And I said, absolutely. We run tabletop exercises. We have plans. We've tested our plans. And he says, okay, so then principals would know exactly what to do. And I paused and I was like, oh no, my team would know exactly what to do. But principals, we had never had that conversation with them. So that year was the first year that we ran tabletop exercises with the principals. And we went through the whole day, what that would look like. It's 9:02. Teachers are coming in and you can't access anything. And then we go out throughout the day. Now it's lunchtime. Now you get a text and this is going to continue for 3 days. How do you run your school and make sure that instruction continues? So we have a plan. It's called Unplugged Learning. And some of our principals, a very small number, actually have drills, and they'll have an afternoon where they're like, okay, today's an unplugged learning afternoon. This is what it would feel like if we had no technology services for the next 2 hours. We're going to see if we can operate, right? So having those plans in place, but then practicing them. We haven't done that district-wide yet, but that's something that I would like to move to so people can see what that would feel like and what it would look like. There's so many things, obviously, that rely on technology, right? From your cameras to, early release, early pickup information, lunch, food, allergy information, all the things that are within our systems. So, there's things that we can do to prepare. And as we're preparing and we're running these tabletop exercises, people are becoming more aware of the importance and the role that they play, right? They don't see, oh, cybersecurity, that's IT's job. I think we've gotten way better, right? Way better in K-12 of everybody understanding, oh, okay, I play a part in this too. And me clicking on a link or, putting my credentials into a wrong website could bring my whole district down, right? I think people couldn't pair that together. And unfortunately, as more and more districts have gotten hit, it becomes reality for, all staff.
No, I want to comment on that. First off, I think the tabletop exercises are a fantastic idea. That's brilliant. We had something happen to us at ClassLink, and we pivoted and turned it into this kind of learning experience. And it relates to something that you were talking about earlier, this idea that we need to build awareness of the kind of messaging that we might get. So this was a situation where there were two things. One, we were doing these campaigns for training. Everybody does them, I'm sure. It's the same thing. You're sending out phishing emails and you're trying to see who gets hooked. We got and we get some folks repeatedly, actually. So you kind of want to do special training with them, just as you were talking about, Ava. You go to the school and you want to do something special. One of the comments that came back was, it's an unfair test because it looks too real. So that would be an invalid test because, of course, a hacker's email would have spelling mistakes, or it would have something that's a giveaway, like they're trying to raise money for like an imprisoned princess in some country or something that you've never heard of. And we unpacked that and we said, you know what, in a world of AI, there won't be spelling mistakes or grammatical errors or something that just feels amiss in the communication. It's going to be dead on. So we need to get over what once was the way spamware or malware would come in through these phishing attempts that just looked suspect. Now they hardly ever look suspect because they are that good in terms of the grammar and the language and the content. So that was something that we needed to get over. We needed to have a kind of group conversation around that because it's so indistinguishable from something that might be real. The second thing that happened was that we had a communication, an email chain going back between us and one of our clients. Somehow the chain was scraped by a bad actor, and the bad actor registered an email alias, that is to say a domain that looked very similar to ClassLink, and registered an email domain very similar to the client. And they started emailing both sides from these fake addresses. So we were communicating with Bob at such and such school, and we got an email back on our chain from Bob at such and such school, but there was just one character difference in the email domain. And directions for sending payment changed, but in a polite way. So it seemed legitimate. And that's, of course, the communication that they got allegedly from us. And we got an email saying payments on its way or something like this. The idea that through AI, the pathways are the same, but the implementation are at a level of rigor and expertise and sophistication that we just wouldn't have expected. And we have, I think, this latent sensibility in our heads. No, there has to be really telltale signs of there's a misspelling or grammatically off or something like that. And now it's so sophisticated that I think we need to ratchet up awareness and training to acknowledge it'll soon be indistinguishable. Here, they were the emails we were sending back and forth that someone scraped and incorporated in their bad actor email chain. Fascinating, right?
Our last,
Oh, go ahead, Emma.
our last phishing campaign, I'll make this quick. We kind of stepped it up a notch. I mean, because that's what the threat actors are doing, right? So you got to step it up a notch. So we did a little bit of spear phishing and everybody got an email from their boss. But I mean, some of the stuff was like payroll bonus information, right? Like, and so people are like, but it came from, this person. And I said, but we don't, like, you need to put, like, the mindset needs to be like pause and verify, right? Like pause and think of, am I expecting to get this? It's very different. And people do have that mindset, like, well, I was looking for the misspellings, or I was looking for the urgency. I was looking for, all those things that we used to train. Like we used to train these tips. This is what you look for in a phishing email. And now it's like, you really have to question, am I expecting this, and verifying in different ways because, those tips that we used to say, 5-6 years ago just don't work anymore.
I was going to jump in. You hit some really good points. When I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, somebody grabbed information about me off of the COSIN website and sent messages to several COSIN board members indicating how I needed money and how they could send me money. And I was like, well, that's not me. Thankfully, it was, like COSIN board members knew it wasn't me. I said, that's not me, but I am on vacation. Here's where you really can send money if you want to send me money. We're like gone. But I think a couple of things that both Burge and Emma hit on. Emma, you talked about the training and you do the cyber once a year, but then you went through this whole other thing of all the other things that you do throughout the course of the year. And one of the things I tell people when I do presentations on cybersecurity is you can't have cybersecurity training done at the same time in the same way you do your bloodborne pathogens training. They're two very different things. And one is something that you really need to take a lot deeper. And there's a Nietzsche philosophy that I use a lot, and both of you hit on that when you were talking. And it's those, and I'm going to Americanize it quite a bit, but it's if people understand the why, they can endure the how. And you both have talked about really good examples on how you can teach people the why you're doing these things, why we do these phishing campaigns, why we change who it's from. My husband's the chief human resources officer at his company. They do phishing campaigns every single month. And the team asked if they could spoof his email and send one from him. It was the highest number of people that clicked on things because it came from the chief human resources officer. And they're like, well, I thought that was you. And he's like, but it was off. That wasn't my email. And so really educating people on the why you're doing these things. Why are you adding these extra layers of security on? Why are you making them go through these hoops? Will help them endure the how and value the work that you're doing and how important it is to protect the data and the students that we have.
Well, it is scary times. The bad actors have gotten particularly good at spoofing us, and it sounds like culture is going to play a big part in how we do this. We talked a little bit about collaboration and sharing and how we help each other. I guess we don't have a lot of time, but I'd ask for a thought from each of you about where do you see an opportunity to collaborate with another organization, with another type of organization, other people? How can we help each other through this? Because we all have a stake in it.
Sure. So if you never ask the question, the answer is always no. So pick up the phone, go to a TEAL meeting if you're in Texas, talk to another tech director and say, hey, we just went through the cybersecurity rubric in our district. We did it on our own. Why don't you guys do it in your district? And then we'll swap data and we'll see how we can help each other. Let me come in and, let me get my CCRE and evaluate you. I know several tech directors here in Texas that live near me. I know I said I work for an Ohio-based organization. I do. I just live in Texas. That routinely do that. They just swap out. And so you've got to pick up the phone. You've got to call and ask. Cybersecurity, people don't want to say when they've been a victim because, you don't want to hear your dirty laundry, but you've got to talk to the people that you can trust and ask, what did you do? How do you handle this situation? If you don't pick up the phone and ask, the answer is always no, and you're in the same place. So just start a conversation. COSIN has discussion boards, cybersecurity committees. Every single state that has a COSIN chapter has, some type of way to get in touch with others. So pick up the phone, call somebody down the street. You can't do this on your own.
You asked for one thing, I'm going to give you two. So first, I'm continuing to be the fan of what that rubric stands for and how it works. So for those that want to find it, it's a really easy website URL. It is cybersecurityrubric.org. So cybersecurityrubric.org. There's a lot of training materials there, a lot of resources to help implement the rubric. And so that's my first go-to. My second is this, and it sort of goes along the lines with Stacy's recommendation. Begin a conversation, and I think talking with neighboring school systems, I think is fantastic. I would say consider identifying one of your vendors and having a conversation with them about what it is that they do to serve you from a cybersecurity perspective. If you don't know what questions to ask, go to ChatGPT and plug in, what questions should I ask my edtech vendor? And begin a process of engaging in that conversation with them so that they know it's important to you, you're getting the information back, and just maybe you get onto a journey of either the following quarter or the second half of the school year, you pick a second vendor and you do it with them. And then follow up with some time later to do it with a third vendor and a fourth vendor. And what you're starting to do is inform yourself and your team, as well as letting those vendors know you have an expectation to hear from them what it is that they're doing from a cybersecurity perspective. And it ranges from how they're helping themselves protect their environment, because you'd love to hear those ideas. What is it you're doing within your organization? And secondarily, what is it you're doing to protect the reasons I count on you, including the data that I give you? What is it that you're doing in that regard? And I think once you start to do it the first time, the second time, the third time, you're going to start to hear some commonalities and some things that you might highlight as exceptional, and you're going to want to bring that back to your community. And that's what it is. It's about building that community. Those are my ideas.
Yeah, I think with both what Stacy and Rich have mentioned is, reaching out to others is so important. And it can be challenging sometimes because in our seat, especially if you're a small district wearing multiple hats, you can get caught up very easily in the day-to-day, right? Just the day-to-day operations can take up a lot of your time. So this might feel sometimes like a luxury to be able to have time to network and talk with others. And then also some CTOs that I've talked to, we've had peer reviews. We just went through a cybersecurity a very thorough risk assessment. And I think Stacy mentioned this, or somebody mentioned that, it could reflect poorly or you could feel that way. But really, if you don't know the current state that you're in, you're not going to, or where your gaps are, you're not going to get better, right? So people should not be ashamed or embarrassed or anything like that to go out and say, well, these are the challenges that I have, because most other districts, that are similar to them are probably going to have the same challenges. And some of us may be more mature in some, areas and not in others, but, coming together, leveraging each other's lessons and knowledge, could really be a big benefit. And so no CTO or tech director should feel that they shouldn't share or shouldn't come and work together, and it should be prioritized.
Certainly it's easier to ask for help before you have a big problem than after. So make sure we do so. Great.
And as you go through the rubric or any rubric, or as you go through an assessment and you're going through the questions and you're like, oh, you're at a low maturity, it could feel, because I know just having gone through an assessment, it could feel like, wow, am I not doing my job, or I'm low in all these areas. But you have to do the work, like you said, to know before, to see where your gaps are and how you can improve.
Well, we got time for one more question. And I think I'll start with you with this, Kayla, if I could. And that's really about looking forward. And what are the biggest trends, biggest threats that you see on the horizon that you have to most immediately respond to or prepare for? Talked about a lot of different dangers. Is there any that stand out? I guess
the one that we've talked about the most is these threats just getting more and more sophisticated, right? And they're not going away. AI has put, even a larger explosion on that, right? And then our reliance on systems and devices for our everyday grows. So threats are growing and our reliance on the systems are growing. So then we need to, just be prepared. I think for the future, people should have, their incident response plans in place. I think that they should be tested. I think that they should have assessments and have a really solid cybersecurity awareness program strategy at their district. So they're prepared for when it happens. They know how to react and respond, to these threats.
Right. Serge, any thoughts?
Sure. I guess I would say the thing that we're seeing a great deal of uptick, and I think it's something we started from the beginning, is the threat that comes from impersonation. And I don't know that the world has sort of figured that out, because I think it's going to get more sophisticated and the impersonations are going to become even more real feeling and more lifelike. We can see today how AI can create live video of someone with their voice. And we hear stories about fake phone calls being sent to elderly folks claiming to be their kids or their grandkids and in need of money or in need of help, and you have to help me right away. And this kind of thing duping, unsuspecting, sweet folks that are sitting at home. So I feel like this challenge of impersonation is going to become ever more challenging in an era where AI makes the ability to do it ever easier. I would say to that, I think I'm pleased and happy to see that there's ever increasing awareness. There was a time not too long ago, probably everybody on this call can remember for sure, where if you spoke about this topic with someone outside of tech, they'd have no idea what you were talking about. And that's just not today's reality, right? I think we can go to just about any organizational leader outside of technology, and they'll all speak coherently about the importance of cybersecurity. And at least, if they're not so themselves, they're probably just one step removed from a story to tell about something that happened with regards to cybersecurity. So I think it's come closer to home for just about everybody out there. And that's good and important, because it's not going to get solved until there's more awareness and more skill building and capacity to identify it. But to your point earlier, in terms of a question, what do I see on the horizon? I think that's the part of it. And the technologies that are going to help us and the training that's going to help us detect the difference between a true individual or someone who's impersonating one, I think is going to will continue to become more and more important. And I think that's going to be pervasive. We're not just talking about education, edtech, and platforms. I think it's going to be throughout all things technology. So I'm glad that we're all in it. Everyone's getting more awareness, but that one I got my eye on, because I think it's going to be harder and harder. So do the rubric. Yeah. That'll help. If I haven't plugged the rubric enough, do the rubric.
I've never heard somebody plug something that was free so often, so it's great. I will say AI is a huge issue, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity, not knowing what's real, what's not real. MIT released a study earlier this month that 80% of ransomware attacks use artificial intelligence right now. I read 2 articles last week. The first one was from an edtech news source about a new cyber attack that was going around, and it was AI powered and how dangerous it was. And the second one, which was about a day later, was this AI cyber attack was actually invented by researchers in a lab, and they hadn't deployed it. They were just trying to test some vulnerabilities, and somehow word about it got out, and the edtech news thought it was a real cyber attack that was really happening. And so now, it's not even a cyber attack. So now AI, it's interesting how it's freaking each other out. So I'll say what Dare said, look at the rubric, but also he said something else that's really important: to know your vendors, know who you're talking with, know who you're working with. You picked up that issue with Bob because you knew something was off. Your team knew something was off. That wasn't the normal course of business when dealing with Bob from that school district. And so you have to know the people, and relationships matter more than they ever did in an AI world. So, but AI is our biggest problem when it comes to these cyber attacks.
Great. Well, let me try to summarize some of the things that we kind of agreed to in this conversation, because that's the thought of this. So what do we lean into? And there's a couple of things that we've talked about, and I'll try to capture them here. I think one of the things that became clear from the onset is we're talking about a bifurcated challenge here. We've got schools are getting attacked, and the effort is to shut them down, and vendors are getting attacked, and the primary objective there is to steal data. The bad actors are pretending to be more and more like people, and that plus the predictability of schools, things like calendars, make these interruptions and phishing attacks and so on far more damaging than they have been in the past. So we have to be aware of that. We talked a bit about the differences between small schools and large schools and states and districts. And what's happening is there are some things changing. Some of the federal funds are going away, but some of the states are actually stepping up, both in terms of funding, but then also in terms of statutory requirements. Sharing resources is going to help. It's going to help provide equity to all the users that are out there, whether they're in a big district or a small district. And also sharing resources between the commercial side and the education side. Things like the cybersecurity rubric are great tools to use in that effort as resources for folks to take advantage of. I'm sure all of us would agree that the human factor is really important in this. It's going to take lots of training, but what it's really going to take is a shift to a culture, a cyber-aware culture. It's not just a series of activities, but rather, we can't just do it with a checkbox, but we have to build it into our daily existence. And we have to make things fun. We have to make things engaging. Most of all, we have to have a plan to deal with it if we are hit. How do we do that with minimizing the actual impact? We talked also a little bit about the collaboration and sharing. We have to force the issue because a lot of times people will be reserved, they'll be quiet, they won't be outgoing. We have to take the lead and help keep each other accountable, help do peer reviews. And I think sharing in events like this is very important to help others be aware of what we're doing. Even if we don't have a direct contact with them, we can start to engage them. And then finally, this effort there's no end in sight here. This is going to become increasingly, the impersonators, the bad actors are going to become increasingly sophisticated, and their impersonations are going to be more and more real. So we have to continue to increase awareness. We have to be aware of what's happening with AI. And I think one of the underlying messages there, from one of the takeaways for me, is I heard it several times from different directions, but the collaboration and the tightness of the relationship between schools and the vendor community and how we work together we can address this problem far better than any of us could on our own. So those are kind of the takeaways that I heard. Did I miss anything?
You summed it up very well,
Well done.
Patrick.
Well, I applaud all of you for all that you're doing. I appreciate you so much for joining us here today, and I'm sure the audience does as well. And if nobody has anything else to add, I guess we'll say goodbye until next time.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Patrick, for bringing us together. It was great visiting with you, Stacy. Great visiting with you, Ava. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. ClassLink is proud to be the meeting place to facilitate these conversations. If you have a topic idea, send it to perspectives@classlink.com. To keep hearing our perspectives, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.